Hi there, my name is Vince. I'm 19 years old, and I'm going to tell you about how my sister's obsession with me completely spiraled out of control. Before I get into the main story, though, make sure you hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this, click the subscribe button. My sister's name is Eve, and she's 2 years younger than me, so 17. She and I have always been close, and the idea of me getting into a relationship has always been a sour topic to talk about. When I went to college, Eve was a mess. And even that's an understatement. My mom always thought it was cute that the little sister cares so much for the older brother. I thought it was getting fairly annoying. Whenever I would bring friends over, she would bombard them with questions that I wouldn't even think of asking them. Eve has absolutely no shame. After a while, I just stopped bringing people over to my house. That's why when I went to college, I absolutely refused to tell Eve or my mom about my crush, Jade. But my mom is like a psychic or something, because she knew I was hiding something. I never even gave any hints as to who she was. I never mentioned her. And even still, she asked me one day, "Vince, is there something you're not telling me about?" And internally I was like, oh no. So I did end up telling her about it. Jade was a girl I knew in my classes. She was in the same major as me, so we saw each other a lot. Visually saw each other. We didn't talk as much as I'd implied we had. A hi there, bye there. It was small talk. Even so, my mom thought it was absolutely grand that I had a budding crush on her. I thought it was embarrassing that she was cooing over it. I never mentioned it to Jade, nor did I talk a lot about her to my family. I did ask my mom not to say a word of it to Eve, because knowing her, she'd flip out. She'd track Jade down and interrogate her. It's happened before, and I don't want to be pulled into a situation like that again. My mom promised me she wouldn't, and that was the end of the conversation. I honestly didn't know how I was going to keep my crush a secret from Eve for long, because she had the perceptive prowess of a well-seasoned detective. I commuted to college, so I saw Eve every day, and I avoided her at all costs. Of course, that upset her, but all of us would be in a world of hurt if she found out. Well, speaking of her finding out, one day I was meeting up with Jade to do an assigned partner project. However, the entire time, she seemed uncomfortable to be around me. I didn't do or say anything that would elicit that response, or at least not to my knowledge. When I asked her why she was so squirmy, she said, "Do you have a sister?" Well, damn. This was not going to go well. I told her I did, and that her name was Eve. Jade went on to tell me that Eve somehow contacted her. At that point in the conversation, I just wanted to leave and never talk to her again. But I listened. She was saying that I wasn't going to take you away from her, and that if I tried, I'd regret it, she said. Great. So my sister threatened a friend of mine on an empty premise. Okay, cool. I'm going to need a word with her after that. I told Jade that I didn't know where or when she thought that was okay. We got the project half done and I went home. Eve hadn't arrived back since she was out doing extracurricular things. Instead, I immediately asked my mom if she said anything to her. "No, I never breathed a word around her," she replied. Then how the hell did she find out about Jade? She just shrugged. I don't know. It wasn't from me. A few hours after that, Eve came home, and I was in front of her as soon as she came through the door. "How did you find out about Jade?" She just looked at me and went, "It wasn't hard." Well, okay, you master hacker. I don't know what that means, but obviously you went to nefarious lengths to get information. I told her that what she did was not only wrong, but it could get her in trouble as well. She then somehow turned it around on me and asked me why I didn't tell her about Jade. Because of reasons like this. You think you're the only person entitled to me and to my attention. If I get into a relationship, I know you'll bounce off the walls. She just huffed and stormed up to her room, even though she was clearly in the wrong. My mom heard the argument from the living room. "Everything okay?" she called. "No, but there's not really anything to be done." That night I called Jade and was like, Hey, I talked to my sister and told her what she did was horribly wrong. I'm sorry she did that to you. Jade, surprisingly, didn't seem very concerned. I'm not scared of a kid. I was more jarred than anything, she said. We talked about the project the rest of the call, but she said all was fine between us. I just hoped that Eve was done with her foolish antics. Well, she wasn't. There was a period of time where Eve didn't even mention Jade. I had a sneaking suspicion she was up to something, but I didn't know what. Jade and I slowly began to hang out more and more. I guess Eve's little stunt managed to get us closer somehow. I wasn't complaining about that, at least. However, I noticed the more I hung out with her, the more she couldn't keep a straight face around me, like she was paying attention to me or cracking up at the slightest of gestures. She would apologize every time, but she continued to do it. I asked her what she found so funny. All she said was, "Your sister was right." I cut our hangout short after that reply. I drove home immediately. I went straight to Eve's room. I don't think I'd ever been more mad than that before. I asked Eve just what she was doing and, more importantly, why she was talking with Jade. She just shrugged and went, "I'm just telling her things I think she would want to know." Like what? Like how your lower jaw juts out when you laugh. Oh, that little brat. She knew very well that that was one thing I was self-conscious about. I did hope that it wasn't that obvious, but thinking back on the "your sister was right" statement, I was wrong. The fact that Jade just went along with it was what hurt more. I asked Eve what else she told her. Not much. Just about how you have a crush on her. The amount of sheer energy it took to not throw her out the window was astronomical. She really was trying to ruin all the possible ways for me to get into a relationship. Huh. Not to mention with someone I actually liked. I didn't know if calling Jade and just saying Eve was a dumb little kid would do anything, but I tried anyway. When she answered, I explained everything in grave detail. She just listened on quietly as I rambled on about how stupid and possessive my sister was of me. When I was done, she just laughed. Again, Vince, it's fine. I told you. I'm not scared of a kid. I find it kind of cute that she's trying to scare me away. Well, I certainly didn't expect that reaction. I asked her what she meant, and she replied with, "I've been wanting to ask you out for a while, but seeing how much your sister was obsessed with chasing me away, it kind of drew me in." Okay, that conversation did not go in a direction I thought it would. So, since she had already admitted her interest in me, she asked me if I wanted to go out with her. Seeing as Eve's attempts to thwart her didn't work, I didn't see why not. So I agreed. Though, I wish I'd known back then that Eve managed to hear my conversation through the wall. When Jade and I went out on our date, I'll call it, a few days later, things were going smooth. It was like we were just hanging out. We decided to eat at the small local diner. It was perfect. There weren't that many people, which was perfect. We liked a little more privacy. Halfway through, Jade gets a phone call. She didn't answer it right away, and I asked if everything was all right. "Yeah, it's just my ex calling." Which is weird, we promised no more contact after we broke up. Jade's ex from high school, and she broke up before she went to college. She told me about him before, but she didn't tell me they were no longer in contact. I asked her if she was going to answer, and she replied with, "He wouldn't be calling if it wasn't something important." Yeah, I was a little disappointed, but I didn't blame her. She left the diner to talk with him privately outside, and I waited for her, and waited for her. After like 30 minutes, she never came back in. We finished eating, but stayed because we wanted more time with each other. I left the diner to try to find her, but she was nowhere to be found. We drove in my car, which was still parked in the parking lot. Jade wasn't anywhere, so I started panicking. I called my mom and was like, "Yeah, Jade kinda went missing. I don't know where she is." She was like, Okay, calm down. Come home and we'll figure something out." So I did as she said, and as soon as I got home, both Eve and my mom were in the living room. My mom asked me if Jade had her phone where I last saw her, etc. As I was talking to my mom about that, I noticed Eve all fidgety, which is something she only does when she's hiding something, usually in her room. I asked Eve why she was so nervous, and she just replied with, "It's nothing, just cold." Okay, yeah, as if I'd believe that. I asked her what she was hiding, and that's when she got really fidgety. My mom said to settle it some other time. She had to go fill a missing persons report. She left soon after, and it was only Eve and I. I asked her again, "What are you hiding?" She said nothing and left the living room to go into the kitchen. Well, seeing as she was letting her guard down, I ran up the stairs. She heard me because she started running behind me, like back when we were kids. I beat her to her room and locked the door behind me. Yeah, she wasn't happy with that. When I got to her room, everything seemed the same, except for one thing. There was a small stack of cash on her desk. "Hey, what are you using this money for?" She yelled back through the door. "Nothing. Get out of my room." Ha, like I was going to do that. I don't normally scour around my sister's room. I'm not weird like that, but I would only if I knew she was hiding something. I came across her closet. I expected nothing. I just slid open the door, and what I didn't expect was to see Jade tied up and unconscious on the floor. There's a little more to go on this story, so if you want to see a part 2, then just comment down below.